go through that dilemma often, that is making films even worth it, especially the kinds that we make. I mean, how many people really watch it, and does it really create a change, and how slow is the change when the urgency is sort of looming large. But definitely the seeds of these inequalities or these maladies are also sown, very soon after kids start growing up. So if the solution also probably lies there, because that is when we have to create that sense of compassion, that sense of equality. And it's not only about boys or girls. The fact that we genderize so early on, I mean, before, they're children. Why can't we just see them as children? Why can't, as adults also, why can't we see ourselves as human beings? Why does our identity of being a woman sort of supersede all other identities that we also hold? So I think it's very, very important that just as we teach in, especially in our kind of traditional patriarchal societies, just it's so important to teach women that little girls, that sense of confidence, that sense of freedom, that sense of abandonment, that sense of confidence. Similarly, I think the boys have to be taught a sense of responsibility, a sense of equality, a sense of respect for girls. But how do we do it when the adults who are teaching them themselves are so deeply prejudiced? They themselves are so deeply discriminatory. Then who's going to teach them? So that's why it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation. As we change our children. As we become aware, we make our kids aware. I know that when I have these conversations with my child, I mean, he sometimes doesn't understand that why are we even talking about it? Because hopefully the solution lies in this generation, because he just finds it so unbelievable that there would be any kind of difference created between a boy and a girl, or a man and a woman. Sometimes when I say, well, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, maybe there were reasons, but why are, in today's time where we are going to the moon and the Mars, why are we still so discriminatory? And he turns back and say, why was it okay 50 years ago? Why was it okay 100 years ago? And I feel that, am I also deeply conditioned to think it was okay maybe 100 years ago, but it's not okay today? So I think every generation has to question it so deeply, that what is this coup? Why does 50% of the population that holds up half the sky, why is it left with this shorter end of the stick? Why do we have to constantly justify our actions, our existence? So I think definitely young boys, when they're growing up, when they're seeing all these crazy role models of their fathers sitting on the couch and ordering around, and their mothers working, or their little girl is, their younger sisters are working more than they are, that is when the questioning begins. And if we can provide them with some thoughtful things, with some answers, maybe the world would be a different place. But I think that's been, in fact, a big problem in the whole feminist movement as well. That even the feminists that open doors for people like us actually focus so much on women, and I think it's natural. The people who are suffering, the people who are quieter, there is a culture of silence. So you first say that, listen, you've got to break that culture of silence. You've got to start asking questions. You've got to sort of speak to power. You've got to know your rights. So a lot of work happened on women, and what it has done, it's actually further skewed it, because women are now asking questions. Women are not taking, things lying down as much they probably did. And the gap is actually increasing, because no work has really happened with boys and men. And therefore, they are suddenly sort of stumped almost, that what has happened. I mean, marriages are breaking. There are far more divorces now than there were probably ever before, which doesn't mean that the marriages were better before. It's just that more and more women are sort of questioning the institution of marriage, and, realizing that there are subtle and blatant inequalities that exist in that institution. So therefore, there is this lopsidedness, and definitely there is a great need to work with men, because, like Leslie said, you said, that this is not against men. In fact, feminism doesn't really have a gender. Anyone can be a feminist, as long as you believe in that equality, as long as you believe that men and women have the same rights, the same emotions, the same desires, you are a feminist. So the work with men is in fact crucial, because till then, like Leslie has as well said, that we are all complicit. And we are the ones, as a society, we are creating this violence, and women have to take as much responsibility as men have to in creating this change. In fact, it's tragic that when somebody is a victim, whether it's in a caste issue, or whether it's in a gender issue, or if it's a religious minority, whatever the case may be, whoever is the victim is having to find the strength to make that change. Those, in fact, who are more powerful, those who are more privileged, if they felt that, yes, I mean, even though I have all the power and the privilege, I don't really deserve it, or it needs to be shared. It's not about even allowing each other, but actually believing that there is merit and equality as a society. When they start participating, the change will be greater. And we do have some allies in men. It's not like there are no allies. There are spouses, and in fact, there was a study which said a woman reaches her full potential either when she's single, or if she has a supremely, and supremely was in red, bold, and caps, that it has a supremely supportive, partner. So definitely, if we have to grow further, if our children have to be more sensitive, we definitely have to start, in fact, with boys and men. There's no question about it. And we've already failed for too long. So this could be the next chapter of feminism, is to engage with men, allow them to speak about how they feel, share what we are actually feeling, and create a space of vulnerability so that the true emotions can find a place to be expressed. That's true, because we have also stereotyped, we put them in boxes. When my son was really small and I would go to a toy shop and they would say, okay, if I wanted to buy something, they would say, boy or girl? I'm like, he's
Yeah.
4. How does it even matter whether it's
Yeah.
boy or girl? So the girl had all the, glitzy stuff and sewing and stitching, and the boys had the cars and the Legos, and as if girls can't play. So, what I had said earlier also, this genderization. But I think this generation, I don't know. I mean, I remember going to a restaurant and there was a transgender who was serving us, and my son was looking at their painted nails and, sort of a bright red lipstick or something. So I thought maybe this was a good time to start a conversation. And we talked about how sometimes you can be trapped in a male body and, you could feel like a woman. And he didn't even bat an eyelid. He said, of course, it's their choice. And I realized that maybe I was burdening more, like how do I talk to him so that he's more sensitive to it. But if I think you just give them the right atmosphere, children are not as judgmental as we adults are. So even, I mean, we need far more unlearning than I think. If we give the right atmosphere to children, and where we are not constantly saying this is what a boy does, this is what a girl does, when they have friends who are girls and boys, and we stop using those words, that maybe there's so much of unconscious bias that we as adults sometimes don't know the language that we use and how it can be harmful and how it further stereotypes. So I'm very hopeful of this generation, or I don't know, maybe it's a smaller pool, those who are maybe more exposed. But kids naturally are not judgmental. How do they know these binaries? How do they understand this fluidity? Because they start slowly hearing, don't cry like a girl. Sometimes a relative says something like that to my son, and my son quite easily, in fact, cries, if he feels sad. And then he would turn around and say that, once he was losing a game, and I said, it's just a game, why are you crying? He said, when somebody wins, you always congratulate the person and everybody celebrates. Obviously, you're going to feel bad if you lose. And I realized that's so true. Even though I was being very, as a conscious parent, I was trying to talk about failures as, just something that happens and it's part of the game. You shouldn't think of it as winning or losing. But when somebody wins, we still are happy and say, oh, you won. Okay, that's great. That means the learning we have to do is that when somebody wins, we have to be just as as neutral as we can when somebody loses. Children are constantly asking questions and finding that out. So we have to first really figure out our own prejudices. Till we don't address, and I feel very strongly about it, I made sure that I gave my son dolls and kitchen sets and everything that we played together without even telling him, oh, this is what girls usually do, and look, I'm giving it to a boy. There is no great sort of a big value attached to it. It should be just as normal as you play with cars. Or in fact, he didn't even play that much with cars, but he used to love building. And like today, he does cube and he does chess. And so many times I see educated parents saying, oh, that's like a cool boy doing cubes and chess. And he says, my daughter, she would never get into it. And by saying that my daughter will not get into it, maybe even if she wanted to try it out, probably she wouldn't. So we also, every time we say something that's very genderized, I think we have to catch ourselves. We ourselves have to ask ourselves that, is it because I'm preconditioned to thinking that this is what a boy must do and this is what a girl must do? So there's a lot of work that we need to do, and with work like what Leslie is doing, maybe the children, even with this prescriptive teaching, maybe the children finally will teach the teachers something which will have more depth, and the teachers will start questioning their bias and prejudices. Yeah, no, I just want to say, even about colorism, for instance, I mean, whether it's discrimination based on gender or caste or color or religion, what it really attacks is your sense of self. So when you do all of this, what you're really killing is a sense of self, and that has an impact throughout your life. Because if you don't have a comfortable, a good, a healthy sense of self-esteem, it's going to be the biggest roadblock. So when we stereotype or when we label people, that you're a dark person and you're a fair, and glorify one color and put down the other, what you're really doing is crushing that sense of self. So everything is so tied in. I mean, there are so many intersectionalities of all of these things that we are talking about, and that's why it's also important that we work at a larger level. So while we may be working on gender, we're also working on color, we may also be working on caste, we may be working on race, we may be working on religion. So that kind of understanding for the educators to have, for parents to have, for teachers to have, is very important. But we have created a society where we don't value teachers. I mean, teachers is like, if you don't get any work, then you become a teacher. And that's why all caregiving professions are all sort of kept for women, whether you're nurses or you're school teachers or you're government school teachers, that those are some of the only professions where there are more women, because it's seen as a part-time thing. It's not given the value. Caregiving as such is not given the respect it deserves. So I think that also needs to change. Our own perceptions about people who are not just, who are caring, who are teaching, who are educators, we as a society need to elevate them. We need to celebrate them. We need to respect them so that they can then create those transformations that we are talking about. So I just thought I'll add that, because it really hurts that teachers are sort of so marginalized in just the hierarchy of professions that we see in a society, and yet we talk about education being so important without the educator being given the due respect.